Segment 3, Gold and Black Live. Stacey Clarity joins us, and we'll take a half second to thank our sponsors, XXX, and of course Basham Rentals and Hilton Garden Inn. You can see them, their logos behind us. And Stacey, welcome to the show. And we have, there's always something going on in the world of football and Purdue football. I know Brian touched on some of the junior college guys coming in, but one of the things is always interesting, and I'm not picking on Brian or anyone else. They always say they're so definitive. You know, there is nobody here and nobody can play. But there are guys, J.J. Prince being one, but others that will get an opportunity in the spring to see if they can win a job there.
Right. I think that's why we're stressing the importance of having to get some tackles, is because they really don't know who that's going to be. They do have some guys, you know, here right now that probably will compete for that. You mentioned J.J. Prince. I think he seems like a likely candidate. Joey Warburg is another young guy who maybe has a chance to compete there. We heard, you know, we assumed kind of Cameron Sermon was going to maybe be one of those next in line guys on the outside, but they moved him inside during the year, and Daryl Hazel has just loved him on the inside and thinks he can really kind of develop into a good Big Ten player, is what he called him. So I don't think maybe Cameron is an option on the outside too. And it would have been really interesting had Michael Rouse stayed on offense this year. You know, they did that kind of experiment with him. I mean, he seems to have the right body, and I think most of that was Rouse's. He didn't want to be there. I mean, he was pretty honest about, you know, I'm a defensive guy, and so I don't know how much, if they really thought maybe he could project out and they wanted to keep him there, but they allowed him to go back to defense. So that would have been really interesting. Obviously, they still need help on the defensive side of the ball on the line too, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But so there are some guys, but there is no question that those JUCO kids, or even the Northern Illinois commit, who's the high school player, will have a chance to compete right away. But I'm sure there are some Purdue guys on the roster right now who
may take offense to that, actually.
So really are going to, maybe that'll push them too and give you some options.
And to me, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but to me that's the essence of where this program is right now. They need somebody to come out of nowhere to become players, and or at least guys that have waited their turn or waited in the wings. If this program is going to get to the level that it wants to sooner rather than later, that's going to need to happen, certainly. All right, Langston Newton, also an interesting situation that was dropped on us and others. Certainly in the opportunity for him to come to transfer from Kentucky to Purdue. Tell us a little bit about that, and what strikes you about the fact that here's a guy who hasn't played in 2 years in Kentucky. He's coming into West Lafayette, and Purdue needs big bodies, and who knows how this will work out.
Yeah, I think it was interesting last week on the show we were talking about Kason, because we had just kind of heard that, and then it was like, well, he's saying that he told us that an offensive lineman was coming in, so that was obviously wrong, but a lineman came in, so that was a little bit different. It was surprising for us, and I had asked some Purdue people over there, okay, how many are you having? You know, who's coming? And they kind of waited, and this is probably why, because they knew that they were going to bring Newton in. Interesting guy. We haven't been able to speak with him yet. We've asked and haven't kind of gotten that response. I think they're trying to wait on compliance. I'm not sure why that would matter to stop us from talking to him, but he's going through compliance right now. Tom Mitchell's working on trying to get him a waiver, a hardship waiver that would allow him to play immediately. The backstory there is his father John talked to Brian last week, or this week. Yeah, it just happened this week.
I'm so confused at where I am right now. That I don't know,
was that he has an 87-year-old grandfather, Langston does, who lives with his family and had a bad fall and has a head injury and is recovering from that, and so they would like Langston closer to home because he's helped out with him. So that, I think, is kind of the basis for the waiver. What we've heard of him, some from his father, which, you know.
Yeah, his father.
It's his father, so you can kind of take that with what it is. But he said, you know, he's a guy who's going to give all he has, 110%, kind of a kid. And he said he worked mostly with the scout team defense the last 2 years, which to me says a little bit because, you know, as a redshirt freshman, maybe you would hope you'd move up to actually kind of getting reps with the number 2 defense or not being on the scout team. So I'm not sure what that means exactly, because if you have a chance to play, you're not playing on the scout team during the week. But he said, you know, if he's a high motor guy, if he's this 110% kind of guy, that's what Purdue needs, especially on the defensive line. Because I think, you know, you lost a couple guys up front, obviously Bruce Gaston, Greg Latta, Ryan Isaac, and but I think that they need to replace those guys with guys who maybe Ladd, I think, had a pretty good motor, but he was injured a lot. Gaston,
Yeah.
that's one of his deals, consistency. You play hard, kind of like what we saw with KK Short toward the end of his career. You'd play hard sometimes, snaps, and then not give anything. They need a guy who's going to go all the time. I think that Ryan Russell is a guy who has shown that in spurts, but not consistently enough. I think he needs to be a high motor guy, especially when they're playing that outside linebacker position. So if Newton can be at least that guy who's going to maybe show these other guys they need. Rayzon Howard absolutely needs a mentor in that way to show him that he needs to go hard. I think Panfil and Replogle are guys who will do that. So the more guys you can bring in like that, it's only going to be better and help the character, like we kind of talked about last week with Blau and Barron.
Yeah, and you want to, and you would think too, at least certainly what Daryl Hazel brings to the table. This is a guy that puts a premium on it. Most coaches do, and that having guys that you need to be able to develop a system where you have the more experienced guys working the younger guys,
Right.
and that's just not where they are right now. But you have to hope if you're a Purdue fan that they get there. All right, we do have some questions, and I don't know if I understand this question. Will this team be younger or older in terms of number of snaps played this year? I guess looking at just in terms of experience, because you do lose some guys on the offensive line, and you lose obviously defensively when you lose a guy like Ricardo Allen by
Right.
definition, and Bruce Gaston, guys that
Right.
have played a long time. But we'll talk about that in terms of still this is going to be a factor in Purdue football next year in terms of experience.
Yeah, offensively, obviously you bring that core back with Etling and all of those receivers really. The guys who were gone receiver-wise didn't get a lot of snaps. So I think there you're okay. Obviously, Akeem Hunt kind of is the number one back. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he is the number one back, but I don't know how much they believe that he can be a number one all-around back. I think that's pretty safe to say that he does some things well, but he's not kind of the complete back that they're looking for. So then Brandon Cottom sneaks in, and he's back too. Raheem Mostert's back too. So I think offensively they have a lot of those young pieces, but they need more snaps. They need more game experience, I think, especially when we're talking about those two tackles. How good of an offense can you be if you can't get protection? We saw what happened last year when that was the case. So for all the skill guys they have, and I do think they have some talent there, you got to protect the quarterback, and we just don't know if that's going to happen yet. Defensively, it's interesting. Taylor Richards obviously has gone through some legal issues here in the offseason. We're hoping to find out if he's going to be suspended or what the repercussions are there. But then Landon Feichter got ejected in the last game that they played in the season, so they potentially could start the first game next season without their two starting safeties on the field. So that would be kind of interesting too. So I think there's an opportunity for even more youth to play, especially on defense next year. It's going to be interesting. I think that people are already asking, how many games are they going to win next year? And the schedule is easier, but there's still so much growth that needs to be done, especially on the defensive side of the ball. We saw in the Indiana game, you can score tons of points, but it doesn't matter if you can't stop anybody.
Yeah.
So I think there's still certainly a lot of questions.
They're going to win 5. That's my crazy New Year's prediction. That's a silly,
Wow.
not silly thing, but I did say that a couple shows ago on Friday morning. But no, I don't know. This is
The non-conference schedule is certainly much easier, and they play 4 or 5 home games to start the year.
Yeah,
Well, the Notre Dame game, I guess.
Yeah, but they have a chance to do it. But it's almost it's presumptuous and if not preposterous to go that route just yet of how many games you're going to win. But if somebody asks, that's what I'm saying. But I do think it's going to be. There's a lot of storylines there. It's going to tell. Now, did we cover? You said you texted Ricardo in terms of talk about a little bit about Ricardo in the Shrine game and also Bruce Gaston.
Allen and Gaston are both down in Florida for the Shrine game. That's tomorrow afternoon. And I was texting with Ricardo a little bit, and he said things are going pretty well. The one thing that hasn't happened yet that he wants to happen is to get an invite to the NFL Combine in Indianapolis next month. So he's a little bummed about that, but hopefully not. Hoping that his performance then in the game tomorrow can maybe kind of get that for him. Haven't been able to connect with Bruce yet, but Ricardo, as we've talked about kind of ad nauseum on the show and in other places, is the guy that you hope makes it.
Yeah.
For everything that he's kind of done and put into the game, and just kind of the guy he is. So I hope he performs well tomorrow.
Yeah, you have a guy that certainly brought it day in, day out. And the interesting thing, we've had Ricardo on the show talking about, maybe he's healthy now too, which is more healthy, and that may help him a little bit when his opportunity comes tomorrow to make some level of an impression. Okay, we have time for one other comment quickly on men's basketball. And not that we've said that the Boilermakers have turned the corner, but it still is time to, and I think even Matt Painter might even say we're going to wait and see just where we are. But it was an important win, certainly, against Illinois. Let's not diminish that, however.
Right. I think that, and I kind of wrote about it yesterday when I did a story on rebounding, they've become, I think, a consistent rebounding team, a pretty good rebounding team over the last just looking at the data over the last 2 years. But what else are they consistently doing well? And that's the issue right now, as it has been for the last 2 years, consistency in general. And I think that it frustrates people, I'm sure, that you see what they can be. Like against Illinois, you know, especially late. Oh, they made free throws down the stretch. Ronnie Johnson was the point guard that you want him to be. The bigs were playing well. You know, the guys were filling their roles exactly how they need to fill them to win a game on the road. But if they don't keep doing it, then it doesn't matter. So I think that, and you can make the same case for the women's team as well. I mean, they get a huge win at Penn State, number 14 Penn State at the time, come back and play poorly against Michigan at home on Wednesday. And so it's like, who are you? What team is this? And I think kind of both programs right now are maybe in that position and both trying to get to the tournament.
Yeah, women have a big game tonight, makeup of the postponed game against Indiana and Mackey Arena, a huge game. Indiana coming off 2 losses after that 14-0 start. So this is, you know, both teams at a crossroads of still trying to, you know, ultimately to make the tournament. And, you know, the one thing about the women's program, too, is that you got that carrot of being able to play at home.
Yep.
And right now, I still think this is an NCAA tournament team, but they're not always looking like it. So, all right, well, we appreciate very much all of you and all the questions today. I want to thank Stacey Clarity and Brian Newbert, and also Seth Davis for joining us. We'll have, if you missed part of the show, we will replay it around dinner time. Gordon will put that together for us. We also want to thank Kim Caldwell for all the folks at WLFI for helping make this happen today, and Ali Krusek. I always butcher that name. I know there's Mike Kruchek, who was the quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know if Ali's related. I'm going to have to ask her that after this. But we appreciate everybody that helps put this show on. We'll be back next week. We're going to have former Purdue point guard Brian Walker will join us as well. He can analyze point guards like few others, and we'll have some fun talking to him. Of course, a member of Purdue's last Final Four and Big Ten, not Purdue's last Big Ten championship team, but Purdue's Big Ten championship team since 1979. So that's a long-winded way of saying thank you, and thanks to our sponsors, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on Gold and Black Live.